Right, are we ready to fight?
Let's do it. It's a great film for me. It's just got everything you want it in a film. You just chuck it on whenever you want.
I'm just so excited already. We've not even done. There's 20 films to get through. We've not even really done one yet, and I'm already excited. We decided to rank time travel films because we watched The Adam Project, and I think it's fair to say we both thought that was a pretty special film, which dealt really cleverly and fun ways dealing with time travel. So, yeah, we decided we're going to go into ranking these time travel films, and I think we'll also just talk a bit about time travel films, and we'll probably both heavily caveat all of our decisions in some way that means that we can completely rescind these decisions without fear of consequence. Because boy, was that tough to do. Yeah, I think I shortlisted something like about 50 films. Wow, 50 films. And yeah, getting that down to some smaller numbers was not fun.
No, to be honest, I shortened it even more because I decided to limit myself to actual time travel films that's designed like kind of not all around the time travel, but it's a heavy component, not just there's time travel in it. So I've really limited myself a little bit here, that's why my list, like you said, changed it 3 or 4 times. And my first list had so many different films on this one, and they're not even anywhere near it now. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, we'll go into the rules of this as well, but just in terms of like that criteria. So when we did the Batman films, you know, I think we both kind of agreed that the Batman was the better Batman film, and the Dark Knight was the better film.
Yeah.
But when you are looking at a criteria that specifically sort of designates the Batman and everything that involves, that was the criteria that put it up there. But actually, if you were just talking about the best films ever, I think The Dark Knight would tip that. And I think when we're doing time travel, the daft thing is I could say a ton of things that I used to justify these decisions, but like number 3, I justified it this way. Number 2, I justified it completely the other way. Like there's no consistency. There's the old thing I always say, I had it on videotape and watched it a lot. that's always a thing that sways me. Or I'm like, no, time travel's a key component. And then the other one is, time travel's in it, but actually it's just this thing. Like there's nothing.
Absolutely. Well, this film doesn't do time travel very well, but I love it, so therefore it's in the list. And
yeah. Scientifically, I don't care. I just want it in the list. Right. There's a few things I thought it'd be kind of fun to just talk through first in the world of time travel films. First and foremost, time travel doesn't exist. That's something that we should probably just make sure everyone's aware of.
Yet.
Fine, yet. So what that usually means is with any sci-fi, you have to sort of set some ground rules, and then ground rules can be as wild or as crazy as you like, but ideally, once you've set them ground rules, you should stick to them ground rules. I always find that there's 2 main ways that time travel works in a film. It's the causality problem is kind of like the big thing. So either you can affect the future or you can't. Either everything that happened because you traveled through time and the events played out the way they did originally because of your interactions, or you can travel in time and therefore change things. So those 2 films that stood out for me when I was thinking about this, where the timeline has already happened and you just sort of saw it the first way around, was 12 Monkeys, and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is actually a time travel film. It's a key component of the plot. But spoiler alert for all these films, nothing that happens is of any consequence in terms of changing the events that occurred. Whenever you watch a film and you get into that world, instantly you kind of know how it's going to play out, because as soon as you see the first thing on screen that lets you know that this timeline is exactly as it was. And for me, in the Harry Potter thing, I remember watching that at the cinema. I think it's the only one I saw at the cinema as well. They throw a stone at a window, and we saw that stone being thrown at the window initially, and it was them in time doing it. So as soon as I saw that, I knew instantly nothing was going to change, because we were just seeing their version of that story, if you like. And then the other timeline thing is that the timeline is malleable. It can change. So Back to the Future and Terminator are just key ones for that. Back to the Future is the daddy. And I'm sure throughout this episode, we're going to hear the words Back to the Future more than once.
Maybe. And by the way, if you just see me looking down, I've just changed my list. Forgot a film. No, I had a film on it. I took it off, but now I'm putting it back on there because I refuse to have it on there.
Was it Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban?
No, it was not. It was. Yes, you'll find out.
We'll find out.
No spoilers.
Are there any other like time travel kind of cliches or paradoxes or things like that you've seen and you're just kind of like, I don't know, you've got anything that you feel like you want to comment on in that?
Well, like I say, the fact when we talk about time travel, as in actual time travel, where you go backwards in time, does it have to be backwards or forwards in time? And it's the whole thing is it's got to. In theory, time travel is you can go into the future by like Demolition Man, as we use that as an example. And there, it's just it's a time jump. It's not a time travel. So we've agreed with that and that sort of stuff. And I think, to be honest, on there's a lot of. I'm not as stickler for the rules. I get you understand what you mean. Where if it affects time or if it changes it, I like the idea of creating branching timelines and stuff. I love that idea. And but no, yeah, I'm happy with my list. I'm happy with what time travel is and what it isn't, and I'm very much looking forward to upsetting you.
I feel confident that we'll both very much upset each other, and this might be the last ever time we do this.
It'll be fun on the weekend. We're going to go see the film together. Yeah,
yeah. We'll just be sat really far apart. There's tons of stuff in the world of time travel films, and I did a little bit of research, and by research I mean I googled something for about 20 seconds. And the earliest kind of time travel-y film was something from the 40s called Repeat Performance, and basically this woman just relives the same year, so technically a Groundhog Day type of thing, but Groundhog year. And then I think you've got something like It's a Wonderful Life, which does some timey-wimey things where we sort of see an alternative universe, if you like. But it's not really until the 80s where James Cameron gave us Terminator and then Zemeckis gave us Back to the Future that it sort of became mainstream. Yeah. There is a film from the 60s called The Time Machine, which is based on the H.G. Wells novel. But I think there's just not much delving with time really at all until the 80s when it became a real kind of like summer blockbuster event. And from that point, if you did like a timeline of all of these films, when you hit the 80s, it just goes crazy at that point.
Yeah, it goes mad from the ones.
There's just absolutely loads of them. So we shortlisted this down to about 50, but there were some things that we've ruled out. So let's just be clear on this now. So number one, going to sleep doesn't count. So Captain America and Demolition Man are out, and Demolition Man is one of my personal favorites, but
he goes to
sleep.
He goes to sleep. Count. It's not a thing, yeah.
Time loops don't count. So Groundhog Day. And there's the daft thing is there's Groundhog Day, and then there's every other film that copied Groundhog Day. Like that's the be all and end all. That needs to be actual time travel. So I think we said something like Source Code doesn't count. Rapid aging doesn't count. So I'm talking things like Big, 13 going on 30, and there was a couple others that kind of came out around the same time, or like that body swap age thing.
That's not count.
No. And then One Quick Journey doesn't count, which is a bit of a, I think this is going to be a soft rule rather than a hard rule. So Planet of the Apes is technically a time travel film because he just goes so far into the future that apes have taken over. But it has absolutely kind of zero bearing on things in that space, if you like. Right. So those are the rules that we've set ourselves out. And as we go through this, we'll probably talk about some of these films because I think there's some cool stuff in all of these that are interesting to talk about. There's all these different cliches that'll come up, the don't meet yourself paradox. Bill and Ted do a blinder of just saying they'll do something in the future, which makes it a reality now. There's a great scene where they go, after this in the future, why don't we go back in time and put the keys to this lock in our pocket? That means that right now they're in my pocket. And then they pull the keys out.
Yeah.
There's some nice little bits like that. And then you've got the classic Man Out of Time, which we will touch on in one of mine.
Ooh.
Okay, let's jump into this. I'm going to let you go first. I'm going to be writing down your scores, and I've already got mine captured.
Okay.
So we can work out a kind of combined ranking, and I'm almost certain that you'll do 10 films and I'll do 10 films, and they'll just be very different 10 films.
Okay.
Right. Are we ready to fight?
Let's do it.
Go on then, mate. Jump in. What's your number 10?
Number 10 is, I should really start with honorable mentions. And the fact that it isn't in part of this because I've deleted one off my list that was on the list. I'll mention that one. I'll not go into anything in detail, so I want any spoilers. But Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I had that at my number 10. And it's been eliminated because I missed a film out. It's been eliminated off my top 10 list on there. Even though I love it as a film on there, it's a great film for me. It's just got everything you want it in a film to. You just chuck it on whenever you want.
I'm just so excited already. We're not even done. There's 20 films to get through. We're not even really done one yet, and I'm already excited.
So yes, I didn't want to upset you because to be honest, I love the film. I wanted to mention it, but it's been dumped, and I've dropped it in number 10 instead. Is The Adam Project because I just think I'm surprised that I was gonna leave it off, and then I just thought, you know what? Because it's new and it's not got that kind of classic thing. I don't want to punish it for it because it was a very, very excellent film. I really enjoyed it, so I put it in my number 10.
I will not even give you any grief over that. I really was torn with this, and I think I don't know if we said it at the beginning, but the reason we decided to rank time travel films is because we watched The Adam Project, and both, I think, were pretty unified in the fact that actually that was just an amazingly fun and solid film. Really nice film, to be fair. Do you want to do this one for one, or should we rattle through 10 through 6?
Oh yeah, let's do 10 through
Let's
6.
do 10 through 6, and then we'll go peg for peg in the top 5.
Cool.
What's your number 9?
I still think the top 5 is going to be very different as well. My number 9 is Star Trek First Contact.
Oh, mate. Oh, this is disgusting behavior.
I'm honest, I'm not a huge, I was never a huge Trekkie, and I would have had it higher up on there because as far as that film goes, it was the first film from a Star Trek point of view that actually, from the original, from the Next Generation cast and so that actually got me thinking, this is just brilliant, and it made me watch the actual series. And I'd never seen I'd not seen the original series before I watched this, and I loved it, and it made me go back and watch. So I've got that in my top 10. I've got that at number 9.
I was a huge Star Trek: The Next Generation fanboy. I think it was like a BBC 2 5 o'clock thing, and so I used to watch it religiously. And when them films came out, I loved them. I've loved them all. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some bad Star Trek films. There is like it's a cliche, but the odd number Star Trek films are generally pretty poor. But First Contact was, the Generations was the first film that crew made, and it was good, and it was completely okay. But First Contact was the film that I feel that crew, that cast put out there, that was just a solid film that I think anyone could comfortably and happily go and watch without any kind of any real knowledge as such. I think they gave you enough sort of not behind the scenes, but enough sort of preamble of what gone before to make that work.
Actually leads me into number 8, which was the J.J. Abrams, I think was it 2008 Star Trek It's a reboot, wasn't it?
Okay.
So I've gone in with Star Trek at number 8 on there, which I wasn't going to do this. 2009, in fact, it was.
Yes.
I wasn't going to go with double Star Trek. I just thought, do you know what? That film, again, set up, it's for like a whole new generation of people, and with a cast that's just superb. And it's a film that I find myself putting back on again and thinking, I don't think I rated it high enough when I first watched it. And now when I watch it back, I can chuck it on whenever I want, and I'm sat watching it. If it's on the TV, I'll watch it. And it's one of those I put it on my list because I think it's solid all the way around.
I would not disagree. I think that film was superb. I think in terms of like rebooting or relaunching a franchise, it was just a solid film. I personal favorite of mine. I think it's one of the best in terms of them Star Trek films. It's definitely one of the best ones. The time travel element, you've really. Do you know what? Yeah, that's a solid.
He comes back, and then there's been Spock back.
The Romulans and Spock both come back.
They change the whole storyline of what happens as well with Romulus being destroyed and stuff.
And very cleverly and very clearly, I think young Spock says everything that happened before will now not happen because the timeline's changed. So you just get this nice and clear. It's a relaunch, reboot, but it's the old. Like it was very cleverly done. Mate, yeah, I'll give you that. I like that.
And I apologize now because this is the first one I think you're going to be actually upset with. At number 7, Back to the Future. Number 7, Back to the Future.
I don't think I would be upset by that. So I don't want to delve too much into this now because, there were 3 Back to the Future films. Do you want to just tell me what made you put that first Back to the Future film in at number 7? Do you want to tell me what it is that made the first ever time travel blockbuster summer hit, franchise launching, world changing, global extravaganza film 7th on your list of the top 10 time travel films? The film that invented the flux capacitor. Launched every
I can tell. No, I'll tell you straight away. I out of the Back to the Future films on there, it's the one that's set in a time period that least does it for me. The actual story, great. Going back in time, love it. Fantastic stuff. But it just doesn't do it for me that time period. It's boring. It just doesn't do it for me at all. So it's one of those ones where it's still a great film. The fact that what it does, and it's like you said, it launches so much of these films in the future, and it's literally the go-to film when you talk about time travel. It is, but as an actual time period, it just doesn't do it for me. So it just gets dropped down to number 7. I'm sorry, I apologize, but
that's fine. That's fine.
So
go on then. Just keep insulting me a bit further. What's number 6?
Deja Vu.
Ooh.
And you know what? I know it's above Back to the Future, which I mean, as an actual, I know we're doing the Batman thing. We did this whole thing where this is the best Batman film, and Back to the Future is a better time travel film than Deja Vu. Deja Vu is a better film, as in like acting style, and he just has he's probably my favorite actor as an actual just pure actor on there.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington's he's amazing. He just emotes so well. And when I watched this film was just this massive sleep hit for me where I didn't know anything about it. I didn't see a trailer before it until like a couple of days before. I can't remember who I went with.
I think it was you and me.
I think we went together. I'm pretty sure it was. And that was one of those things that I just came out like, what the hell? That was amazing. It was just, and there wasn't, the trailers didn't give you anything. There was going to be any time travel involvement whatsoever at all for the one I'd seen. And then obviously, I think I saw one afterwards. It did obviously introduce it, but I didn't go in knowing it was a time travel film. And afterwards came out like, wow, that was amazing. And it's one of those ones where I used to buy a lot of DVDs. I did. So I used to get every single riddle of the film. I used to buy it. I've still got Deja Vu as an actual DVD somewhere. Yeah. It's classic for me. I love it. It's a great film.
Do you know what? I'm going to give you a spoiler alert to my list. That is not in my top 10. But I couldn't argue it out of yours. I don't remember it that well, actually. It's not one that I ever owned, I don't think. I think I might have recorded it off of Sky, a couple of years afterwards, but it's not one that I went back to. I have a blur of a few films that are in that kind of era, that mid 2000s, there was a few things. There was like Next, the Nick Cage one, and there's a few of them that blur a touch, but Denzel at that point, like that was like Man on Fire territory time, wasn't it?
That's what I think. That's what really maybe swayed me a little bit. He had a load of like Fallen. He had a Man on Fire. He had this where he just every film he seemed to drop on there was like Training Day was just super. And I just think because he's probably my favorite actor on himself, not to do with any other kind of sci-fi films. I just really loved it. So it just went very high. I put it on my list, and I was like, I can't put that there. But then I was like, why am I punishing Denzel? I'm not going to do that again.
No, golden rule: never punish Denzel. He doesn't deserve it.
Exactly.
Right, that is your 10 through 6. So, The Adam Project, Star Trek: First Contact, Star Trek 2009. I don't know what, and then Deja Vu. That's
I can't remember what I put for number 7 again.
The microphone broke. Okay, right. I will put you out your misery, and let me just change. I've my list. I'm just curating it because it went down to about 15 because I kept moving things, and I was like, well, I'm going to put that there, and then if that moves, right. There's a thing that you always tell me: just because it's old doesn't make it a classic. And that's wrong. My number 10 is the first proper time travel film from the 1960s, from 1960, and it's The Time Travel. It's based off the H.G. Wells novel, The Time Machine. Yes, that's in at my number 10. I've moved some bits and pieces around. I have huge nostalgia for that because my dad kind of introduced me to it. We were looking through the TV guide and he was like, oh, The Time Machine's on. And, he would have been 13 when that film came out. And I think about them films I watched when I was a young kid, like that period of time up to say 15, 16. Some of them are like really transformative films. And it makes me think that was a transformative film for him because I think he read the book as well. And then he saw that film. I would not claim that it's a great film, but as a defender of the classics, I have to put it in there at number 10.
I had it at number 12.
Wow! Oh, wow!
I know, it's surprised. It's one
just
because
it's old doesn't make it a classic.
Well, I know, but the reason why I put it on there is because it's like for me, it's like one of those films like Gremlins, like Top Gun. That was when I was younger. You used to be on the TV on an ITV or BBC on a Sunday, Saturday afternoon, and if it was on, you watch it like Star Wars. And it's one of those films that it was easy. It was easy on all the time, and it's just been ingrained in it. The thing is, I couldn't sit and talk you through the plot on there now. I just know I've seen it enough that I enjoy it. So probably why it's not in my top 10, but I've got no problem with that being anywhere near the top 10, to be honest. It's a solid film.
It's fair to say that when we go through this, it's likely that the bottom end of our list will not make the official top 10. But there's just bits in that film, like you'll probably remember the stop motion animation of the rapid aging and things like that, the trees that deteriorate and bodies that deteriorate and things like that. And it's just, it's that old school filmmaking technology, and there's just something there's something magical about it. Anything pre-CGI for me has that little magical trait. Right, number 9, The Terminator from 1984.
Oh my God.
It made the list. It absolutely made the list because it is essentially the first time travel film. It came out a year before Back to the Future and features Arnold Schwarzenegger in one of his earliest roles, the main bad guy going back in time. I love the whole post-apocalypse vibe in films, and this was like the pre-post-apocalypse for me. It was there's things in this film that I just think are superb. I would struggle to keep it in a definitive top 10, I appreciate, but it made the cut. I watched a lot of these films back. When we said we were going to do this, I ended up going back and watching a lot of films. And when I watched Terminator, I was like, that's a good film.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Right, number 8. This is one I don't think I'd seen until I did the rewatch. And it's a film I'd known, but I'd never actually properly seen it. And it's 12 Monkeys from 1995.
It's I've got I can't remember it. I know I've seen it. I can't remember it at all. So I couldn't put it in my list. I would need to rewatch it. And I don't know if people say it's a classic and stuff, but I don't know. It's Brad Pitt, isn't it? And
it's Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis, yeah. And they go back in time and try and alter. I think that one of the reasons it stuck really strongly with me as well is because it's about the release of a virus that causes a global pandemic. And
do you know what? Then I'm not going to go back and rewatch it. I'm not interested in that. I'm doing that here in my life. I'm done with it.
Right, number 7. This is where we're treading similar turf, although it didn't quite cut it. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey for me is up there. I was a huge fan of Bill and Ted, not the third one, that was dreadful, but the Bogus Journey was the second in that kind of two films, and there's just some things in there that are just fun.
Death. Death is the best thing that ever happened. That whole thing was fantastic.
That bit where they challenge him to a duel and they're playing like the little hockey game, and there's so much in that film that's just fun, and they play with time travel really well. The first one, Greatest Bill and Ted's
Excellent Adventure.
Sorry, yeah. It was fun. It was cool. They travel through time, but Bogus Journey just really took it to the next level for me.
Yeah.
Right. My number 6. Back to the Future Part 1. You put it.
I had one place different. you were chewing me out for that. That's madness.
I didn't want to say it at the time, but I pretty much agree with absolutely everything you said. I think it is the first full time travel film because it came out. Terminator is one of the first films that really made time travel a thing that was a key part of what was going off. But Back to the Future was a year later, and it was the one that really gave us so much. But again, the 50s era, there's just some things in there that don't make it a film that I'm gonna jump to rewatch. It's a great film, and it'll be in the top 10. I'm almost certain of that. But it, number 6. That's okay.
That's fair enough. That's 6, 7. I think that's perfect.
I'm just looking at the sort of 10 through 6s there, and there's some things. Right, go on. We're gonna go film for film now.
Okay.
We're into the top 5 territory, so I will say this and then I'll completely rescind it. But this is what we're saying are the top 5 time travel films. Films that feature time travel prominently are also good films, and maybe they're cults, maybe they're recent, whatever. But we're kind of saying this is the best of the best. But also, maybe we're just wrong. So that's
which more likely.
Right, go on. What's number 5?
Avengers Endgame. I would have had, obviously, Avengers Endgame in all-time films is probably in my near top 20 all-time films because it's just so epic in what it does. It's as an actual film for direction and shots for shot. It's not the best, obviously, but as in what you can't argue. It's not like Spielberg at his best. It's nothing, but there's so many scenes in that film where basically you could, every time you watch it, you literally can't, your hair stand on end. Of the Mjolnir scene, the Avengers Assemble scene. I'm sorry, but they are just iconic bits of cinema that'll never ever be forgotten. So for me, I'm comfortable with them in my top 5. Problem was I left it on my whole list because for some reason I dropped. Do you know when you know the butter's in the fridge and you can see it? It's there in front of you. You can't see it. I did a list of 3 times. I'm like, I've not missed anything. I'm looking through this. I've not missed anything. I've missed Endgame. That's it. So yeah, I've got number 5.
To be fair, that happened to me with the Batman films. I wrote down the Lego Batman because it's such a fun and good film. And then when we came to doing the top 10, I was like, oh my God, I've completely forgotten the Lego Batman. Right. So my number 5 is one that, again, I did some rewatches of some time travel films, and I watched a few I'd not seen before. Looper is my number 5. I went back, I watched that, and I'd seen it before, but a long time ago, and I did that rewatch, and it does a lot of fun time travel things in that film. You know, the whole, it's set that slightly in the future, which as a sci-fi geek tickles me. I'm a big fan of that. And it just has that little bit of stuff in there, that just that little bit of magic that just makes it a bit special. And you know, at the end of the film, when he's trying to decide what action he should take, and I don't know if you will remember it, but there's like a scene where it's like, do I kill Bruce Willis or do I kill the kid? And he kind of like, his brain's doing this whole kind of process of, I need to make a decision now, and I know all these facts, and I know what this kid could potentially turn into in a certain situation, in a certain circumstance, and he makes this call, and it just was done in a really fun way. And I think the premise of it, traveling back in time and killing people, was a night. I've never seen that before. I've never particularly heard of anything like that before. And it was just one of them little things where that made a lot of sense. And it avoided the cliches of meeting yourself in the past. It didn't do anything sort of too silly and weird. So yeah, that's my pitch for that being in the 5th position in this ranking.
Excellent. I didn't get anywhere near my top 15. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not the fact, I just didn't love. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I never had any feelings towards it. Maybe if I watch it back again now, it's one of those ones where, for me, it just didn't do anything for me one way or another. And that's fair enough. But as an actual time travel, what he did was really intelligent.
Well, that's the
really
thing.
fun.
Like for me, that's up there on the. This is where my criteria changes on every film. And that's one where the time travel element is what makes that as high up the list as it is. And to be fair, having rewatched it in preparation for this, I'd watch that again. Yeah, if that came on. Right, let's carry on. What's your number 4?
I think this is the last film. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's my last film that I think other people might not even have in their top 10 on there. But my 4th one is Interstellar, and I love it. It's such a great film. It's one of those films where basically it's just, you either like Matthew McConaughey or you don't, to start with. And second of all, it's the music is amazing. The images, that massive highway thing, just, I don't know if it got me. Like, that just felt terrifying. I think I watched it in IMAX at the time as well, and it was just like, the whole thing, just, I really enjoyed it. And I've got that on number 4, Interstellar.
This is not in my top 10. I ruled this out, and I tell you what might be interesting to do with one of these episodes is actually talk about Chris Nolan and Chris Nolan films, because I have never loved and hated a filmmaker more than Chris Nolan. He's done arguably probably, I would say he's probably made my favorite film, and he's made films that are in my top 10. There's a couple of films I absolutely love, but there's a lot that just are terrible for me. You know, Tenet, the last one, was dreadful. I cannot defend that film. He's an amazing filmmaker, but when it comes to telling stories and things like that, it's but I understand Interstellar, and it does. I actually wrote some of the things down about that. You know, it does one of them clever things in time travel films that we don't see very often, and it is science-based. It is this idea that how much gravity affects time travel and getting close to a black hole. It does that really cool stuff, and I love that element of it. You know, when they're on the ship and they're deciding, do we go down there or not? Because every minute we're on the planet is a week or whatever on Earth, and they get stuck there for
an hour, and it comes back. It's like 50 years later. You know, that for me is there's actual consequences dealing with the time. That's why for me it was a bit special. It was like heartbreaking, the fact that basically, and it was a realistic version of time travel at the same time. That's why it got it for me. It's one of those ones I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. the most, probably I would say that no matter what happens, it's the most realistic time travel film because it does it from an angle of science. But then they do go into the Tesseract, which is then just stupid. But moving on. Right. My number 4. See, this is super interesting because you've put Star Trek First Contact at your number 9.
Yeah.
I put in my number 4 Star Trek 4 The Voyage Home. And it's the original crew. And I was kind of adamant I'm only putting one Star Trek film in this list. And it when it boiled down to it, I went with Voyage Home, even though I agreed with everything you said about First Contact. Voyage Home's just got that little bit of something special about it that they've copied in Star Trek and in other films tons of times. But you've got the Man Out of Time with 6 characters, and it's just it was that original crew of the Star Trek guys at their most fun. They were just having the time of their lives doing that, and there's beat for beat, it is funnier and more enjoyable than any other Star Trek film, even that it only really does time travel like technically twice, once there and once back, but it does. When it was written,
it's a good film.
It was written to touch on like the climate crisis and the fact that actions that we're doing now could affect us in the future. It was done from a sci-fi angle, but them whales that we just killed off were vital to Earth's survival in the future, and it touched on them bits. But for me, it was just an enjoyable, fun film. And when I got the VHS box set of all of the original crew, and I think I had 3 of the Next Generation Crew's films, it was a 9-film box set, whatever it was. That's the one that I always went back to and kept rewatching, The Voyage Home. So that makes it. That's my number 4. Right. I'm super intrigued where we're going now. So put me out my misery. What is your number 3?
Terminator 1.
No!
When you started saying like a little bit lower, as if like I was going to argue with, I was like, what is he doing? I don't understand. Why would I argue with anything he's saying here? Like, no. For me, it's in those kind of classic, like, because you were either Schwarzenegger or you were basically Stallone when you were younger.
Yeah.
You kind of lean one way or the other. And for me, it was always Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was one of those ones where, like Predator, Terminator on there, all these kind of like classic films on there. For me, it's just everything you want in a time travel thing. I'm sending a robot back from the future to kill somebody so that it stops a renegade kind of. It's just mad. It's brilliant. And the effects for its time were insane on there, and it's watchable now. And people say sometimes I say it's a bit cheesy, but I disagree. I think it's fantastic. It's really lovely film, and it is my number 3. I love it.
Again, this was one that I did a rewatch of, and I think when you see some of the prosthetic effects, when he's doing the surgery on his eye, and you look at that, and I think I'd love to know what perhaps we're old. Yeah. I'd love to know what a younger person looks at that. As someone who's only really grown up with CG, and they've never really seen sort of them practical effects that, even though you look at it and go, well, that looks fake, you have what I think they call in film the suspension of disbelief, and you just see it and you go, oh my god, look what he's doing to his eye, and he's doing this surgery and he's got a red eye, and them things like that were just brilliant. Special.
Agreed 100%. What's your 3?
Well, weirdly, mine is Terminator 2.
Wow, excellent.
So I've ended up putting both Terminators in my list, and I love them both. But Terminator 2 hit the stride for me. Again, there's another episode that I think we need to touch on, which is sequels that were better than the originals. And I wouldn't claim it right now. We'll save that for some time in the future. But there are so many elements to Terminator 2 that are just superb, and I think you could argue it's a funny thing that they've done. How do we do better than sending a robot back in time to kill someone? We send another robot back in time
to help the original,
to save him. And they doubled down on it, and they did some ridiculous CG effects that just, when he turns into metal and he morphs through the window of the helicopter.
At the time was just mind-blowing.
The sheer emotionless soul that he seems to have when he's chasing after them at sort of lightning speed. There's just so many elements to that film, and we get the whole we touch on the ramifications of the first one with the arm and the chip that was in there from Cyberdyne and things like that. It took everything that I think was and everything that was great, but it took some really good elements from that first film and evolved them on and sort of showed how even like them actions caused repercussions that we didn't consider from the first film, and they talk about it in this film. And I think if you look at the list of top famous film quotes, "Hasta la vista, baby" is without doubt.
It's a good film. It's a good film. Definitely
right.
A good film.
That's my number 3.
Number 2.
What is your number 2?
Back to the Future Part 2. Hoverboard, giant Jaws thing coming out in the cinema. That's all it needed for me to start with. But then the night, what was it? The trainers, everything about it, the almanac going back in time, all that sort of stuff was just done so well. There's a lot of time travel stuff in there for you. It's just a great film, and it ended on a great cliffhanger to set up another sequel on there, which again. That's way ahead of its time on there from films and
filmed film. Back to back.
Sure, number 2.
My number 2, I don't know if this would shock you or not. I think it would shock most people if I told them. Avengers Endgame.
See, I would. I have no problem with that. It could have been top of the pile for me, but I put it at number 5 because of the fact that I don't know why. Really, now I'm looking back at
it. Everything you said, bang on. When you're talking about a series of films, an arc of numerous characters over, I think something like 25-ish films at this point, maybe something in the mid.
I think was 22nd, and then 23 would have been Spider-Man. So
right, so 22 film arc. It absolutely just tied up so many loose ends, and it gave us so many iconic scenes and so many iconic moments. When Captain America is holding Mjolnir, that is
amazing.
Them crowd reactions you see on YouTube, they're so believable because it just really was from, Captain America, I think, was like the 3rd of the series of 22 films, and you just know how kind of important he is. So there's all them iconic moments, and then on top of that, you've got some great time travel. They do. They set up a scientific premise of using the Pym particles and the shrinking suit and the ability to go into quantum realm. But not only do they do all that, they then go back in time and touch on all of these really kind of huge elements from previous films, going back to that first Avengers film. And then they they give us this nice scene of like from the 70s, I think it roughly was. There's just so many good elements in that film that for me,
no one should argue with you for that.
When I'm ranking time travel films, that's up there. Right. I'm scared at this point.
Well, I know what yours is, and I think you know what mine is. I'm assuming you would know.
Go on, what's your number 1?
Terminator 2. It's not even close. It's not even. I don't understand why is it number 3 for you? I don't understand. I'm really confused. It's Terminator 2. I'm not gonna. I need to discuss Terminator 2. It's Terminator 2.
Yeah.
It's Terminator 2. I mean, I don't understand. This is the bit I was gonna be. I just assume we're both gonna have Terminator 2 as number 1. I'm assuming I know yours is going to be.
My number 1 is Back to the Future.
Obviously, I can understand why that's in so high up on there. No, I mean, I get that, but it's Terminator 2. I just don't understand why Terminator 2.
Would you care to defend or argue why Terminator 2 goes above Back to the Future Part 2?
Because it's a better film in every single way. It has a robot that comes from the future to the past to defend a kid who's going to become a military leader who's going to destroy the machines. It has Robert Patrick with the most amazing performance ever. It has CG that's literally insane for its time. And it's Terminator 2, and it has the thumb. It has I Still Love You Baby. It has Sarah Connor being an absolute badass on there. It must be the first film where a woman one of the main characters on there is actually legitimately a badass on there.
Oh yeah,
As an ensemble piece in there where she actually steals the show being an actual badass, and she got sequels on there basically 20, 30 years in the future, and she still looks like a genuine badass. Terminator 2, it's amazing. It's a great
she's
film.
thoroughly a badass in that film without a shadow of a doubt. She absolutely kicks ass, to be fair. And
absolutely.
for me, my top three were Back to the Future Part 2, Avengers Endgame, and Terminator 2. And all three of them shifted around for me. At one point, I had Terminator up there, I had Endgame up there. And I think it's just one of them things. It's a bit like the Batman. I would say Terminator 2. Well, yeah, but I would say Terminator 2 is the better film. Yeah. Back to the Future 2.
Better time travel film.
Better time travel film. It does both of these. So I think the next thing that we're going to have to talk about is sequels that are better than the original, because we've put two films at the top of the list here that are both sequels that we are saying are. Well, yeah. I'll give you that. Endgame, yeah. But yeah, I think for me, Back to the Future 2, it is through and through a time travel film, and it talks about causality. It does the diverging timelines, and we clearly see that explained by Doc Brown. We see repercussions of going back in time and changing things for good and for bad. They go back to the 50s, and he interacts with himself in the previous film, which is amazing to see. It's really fun, really cleverly done. And we go to the future, and you called it. We have hoverboards, we have the drying jacket, we have the self-tying laces. There are just absolutely iconic props and quotes and just imagery from that film, which when you talk about time travel films, Back to the Future Part 2 is the film that you imagine.
Yeah,
I can't think of another film that if you asked Joe Public to tell me about time travel films, was that one with the hoverboard? They give me what I want when you travel forward in time, which is just some really crazy imagination of reality with flying cars and things like that. So, and again, it was on videotape. I had it on videotape. I loved watching that on VHS. We had Back to the Future Part 1 that was pre-recorded off at TV, but Back to the Future 2 was in the proper box it was bought, and that got watched loads. Terminator 2 got watched absolutely tons for me. I loved that film. It's tough. It's a tough call.
You're right. And for me, the whole thing came down to which one's got a murderous robot in it from the future. I mean, in the end run, it's Terminator 2, so that's why it won. I mean, it had two. It had technically two.
Whoa, no, it didn't, because he doesn't murder anyone. Schwarzenegger doesn't kill anyone when he comes back. Do you remember that scene where he's got the Gatling gun at the top of the building and he's shooting down at all the policemen?
Does he kill anybody at the beginning?
No, he comes back
before John tells me he can't kill anybody.
No, I don't think he does, because that's not his mission, is it, to kill anyone? His mission's to protect John Connor, so he's not going to kill anyone.
You're right.
So, based on that clear loophole, I win.
No, I understand. That's right. I mean, you're wrong, but I mean, it was an enjoyable conversation where it clearly came second and Terminator 2 won. So, but other than that, I loved it, enjoyed it. Great.
Do you want to know what the official so whenever we've done these top 10s, I put your score in and my score in, and I basically average it. The official Film Xenia rankings put Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey in number 10 spot. Back to the Future Part 1 is in at number 9. We both put that in at 6 and 7, but with all the other films, it's moved. Deja Vu made it in. That's in the 8th spot. And on the same number of points was the first Terminator film. And Looper made it into number 6. Yeah. And then in 5th place is Interstellar. Yeah. In position 4 is Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home. And, we've crossed over. We've both put some of these films in at this point. Those are the last two where only one of us did it. So I was the only one who put Star Trek 4 in. You were the only one who put Interstellar in. But position wise, they both were in the number 4 spot, so they're technically both joint 4th. In the bronze medal position, in number 3 is Avengers Endgame, with 3rd place, and then how this has fallen.
It's worked out that Back to the Future is first and Terminator 2 is the second, because of your disgusting ranking of Terminator 3 at number 3. Terminator 2 at number 3.
I honestly,
you've ruined everything.
I have honestly ruined everything.
I don't understand. It should have been a joint first. I'm
not
sure I can forgive you, really.
It should have been a unanimous joint
busy
first
Saturday now.
position.
I do apologise.
I don't think you could argue with them 2 films at the top.
No,
you could argue forever until the end of time, unless a time machine is invented, and then you can go back and keep arguing again about the order of them 2, Back to the Future Part 2 or Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Fair enough.
I
think we should just leave it at that, Gary, because we should just leave it at that. We should just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I will concede that Terminator 2 is the better film, but Back to the Future Part 2 has the better time travel elements.
That's agreed. That's absolutely fair.
Excellent. I love it when we agree and can leave things on a amicable note.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm going to go now and have a little cry.
Yeah, I think we'll discuss this in between, but I think it'd be interesting to look at some of them sequels that were better than the original.
Yeah, I think less that one.
It'd be the MCU might be a bit tricky, but just because of how everything is just one big continuous story. But no, you've got like
you have the Avengers.
The Avengers themselves are a series of films. So yeah,
I agree.
All right, cracking, mate. That went a lot better than I thought. I genuinely thought, until we got to the top 2 or 3, that we were just going to have wildly different films in there. But actually, there was a strong amount of overlap. So, kudos to us. Brilliant. Well, right.
Have a good one, mate.
Have a good one. Until next time. See you later.
See you later, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Cool.